Hello.
Hi, Jason. Thanks for joining. Hi, Maxim, Priya. Thanks for joining. My neighbor started drilling the wall like by luck just this minute.
We can't hear it, at least. I don't know if it's happening now, but noise canceling is pretty good.
Oh, okay, cool.
So it's only annoying you. It's not annoying
Yeah. That's good to know. Yes. So I know you probably know this weekend is like Easter weekend, and that is observed in many different countries, especially in Europe. So that was kind of our mistake to, schedule this meeting for today, because we may have lower attendance than usual. Like people already, went for their long, well-deserved vacation. So we'll see. We can wait 1 or 2 more minutes and then we can start. And the meeting is recorded, so people who miss this meeting, and especially the presentation and demo from Priya, can watch it on YouTube. Hi, Kara. Thanks for joining.
Hello.
So let me share the link to agenda. So we have a light agenda today, and let me share my screen as well. My camera is broken too, so I turned it on, but it doesn't show me, so apologies for that. I hope you can see this HackMD document with the agenda.
Yeah, all good.
Cool. So the agenda is the first 2 items is action item review, which I don't think we have any action item from previous meeting. And then the meeting time change, it's kind of a reminder, and I see you joined at the right time. So that means we communicate this good enough. And then we also needed to change the Zoom URL. So that's also updated in the meeting agenda document. And then we will talk about the proof of concept we were thinking of establishing for the SIG by reusing the outcome of other initiatives. So I will quickly browse through another HackMD document we created, and we will share the link both on Zoom chat and in Slack channel to gather feedback and look for contributors, because there are lots of different ideas what we can do. And then Priya, the rest of the meeting is for you, so you can talk about Tekton CD chains, do demo, and we have conversation about Tekton CD chains or general supply chain topic. And you will also notice that the proof of concept also looks at Tekton, because it's part of Secure Software Factory, which could be something we can discuss if the time allows. And we can start. So as I said, there is no action item review, so we can skip that. And the meeting time I already mentioned. And the recurring meeting invites are sent to mail list. So if you are subscribed to mail list before we send those invitations, you should probably have the invitations on your calendar. If you don't have them, or if you are not subscribed to the mail list, then you can subscribe to mail list, and any updates to meetings like links or logistics or meeting agenda and minutes, they will be sent to mail list, so you can get that information directly via mail list if you subscribe. So that is the logistic, and then there's the proof of concept. So a summary or a background about this idea. By the way, please share your thoughts about the proof of concept idea if you think this would be beneficial or not, based on what I'm going to summarize right now. When we originally, proposed this special interest group, there were, some concerns about, like, if we are duplicating the work that is done elsewhere, like CNCF or OpenSSF. And our response to those comments or concerns was like, okay, everyone is doing lots of work around software supply chain, including CNCF and OpenSSF. And they are looking at different aspects, like cloud native community is looking at software supply chain from a cloud native perspective. OpenSSF is looking at the supply chain aspects, supply chain security from supply chain perspective. But we noticed that CI/CD wasn't, highlighted as part of those efforts as much as we expected. And that actually resulted in few of us talking about proposing this special interest group, because we don't have this topic discussed broadly within CDF. We had few discussions under special interest group interoperability, but interoperability is a big area as well, and it's not fair to, take over those discussions and focus on supply chain. So we came up with this special interest group. And one of the ideas within the proposal was to establish this proof of concept to look at what other communities are doing, CNCF, OpenSSF, Sigstore, and elsewhere, and see if we can reuse what they develop or establish, and attempt to contribute to that broader effort of improving the state of software supply chain by bringing our expertise or knowledge from CI/CD domain as CI/CD practitioners. So that's the main idea behind this proof of concept. And to get that conversation started, a few of us start talking about like how we can get some basic objectives and scope in place for the POC. And when I talked to a few of you, for example, Ankit, I reached out to you on Slack based on your comment during Secure Software Factory presentation last week. And I also talked to some others to ask, like, what can we do as part of our proof of concept to support the work we will be doing in our group, as well as contribute to other groups. That result in three main areas or topics. One topic is activities. So when I say activities, I literally mean pipelines, stages, steps, and so on. So that is one aspect we could look at and see, okay, everyone talks about how we can improve the state of software supply chain, and people talk about different activities like, okay, generating SBOMs or license checks or vulnerability analysis or artifact signing. And most of these activities have corresponding stages in pipelines. So essentially, talking about those activities is important, but demonstrating those things for anyone who wants to establish such pipelines for their use would be valuable as well. And this would perhaps help us to contribute to those initiatives. So activities is one aspect of the proposed POC. The second aspect is technologies. And this is based on Ankit's comment during the Secure Software Factory presentation 2 weeks ago, because our idea was to start the proof of concept by reusing Secure Software Factory reference implementation. And they made some technology selections as part of their proof of concept or project. And in that project, they use various tools such as Tekton CD chains, or Kyverno, and some artifact image registry and so on. And when Ankit asked, okay, can we use Jenkins X instead of Tekton, the response was positive from Michael Lieberman. And that resulted in me adding technology aspects into POC. If we have people interested in trying different tools, like instead of tool X, people may want to try tool Y to see how those tools could help improve the state of software supply chain. The other aspect about technology is like pipeline security and compliance aspects. That we are creating pipelines, but are they really doing what they are supposed to do? So that can also be looked under technologies as well as activities. And finally, again, the original intention was to look at on-premise CI/CD pipelines, but someone said, okay, majority may be using, on-premise deployments or their own clouds to install their technologies or establish pipelines. But some organizations may be using cloud provider services like code pipelines and whatever. And that resulted in inclusion of environments into POC. And as you can guess, this could make the POC quite big. And that is another topic we perhaps need to take into consideration about how we can, start bringing stuff in a pragmatic manner, and over time we start broadening our perspective by looking at technology and environmental aspects. So that is summary, and I'm not going to talk about everything here, but you will see some, notes here, like what kind of activities there, and so on. And you are all familiar with all these things. Just trying to document them in a way how special interest group interoperability is working with stages and steps vocabulary. So the intention is simply look at that existing work in special interest group interoperability, combine that work with the efforts from OpenCCF and CNCF, and come up with a more complete list of activities, stages, and steps, and then start, establishing those pipelines. And technologies are here, and environments are here, and lots of references here as well. Now I've been talking about 10 minutes. So any comments, questions? Is this idea good?
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I think the real important thing is going to be how is CDF's recommendation or proof of concept, what is it demonstrating that the CNCF one isn't, or that various OpenSSF efforts are doing? Like, I want to work together, right? We're not going to do this alone, but also I want to make sure that the CDF's thing is somehow saying a new thing, taking a different perspective. I think you've identified some ways that can do that, like specifically choosing different technologies, perhaps, than the secure software factory did, or focusing on non-cloud native use cases. I mean, we are CDF, not necessarily cloud native continuous delivery, right? Continuous delivery of mobile apps, continuous delivery of traditional non-cloud native software. So I think, yeah, if we could find ways to really demonstrate something novel and unique specific to CDF's purview and focus, I think that would be really successful. Not that just replicating the same work as these other groups is not useful. I think just having another example of it would be nice, but also having a specific CDF, angle on it would be good.
Yeah, exactly. I think you summarized it pretty well, Jason, so I'm not going to add anything more to what you said. I think, what you said, like cloud native, like focus being on cloud native, I'm not saying it's not a good idea, but I remember a talk from one of the CDF events or something. Someone was actually saying, okay, cloud native is cool and everyone is going cloud native, but there are some organizations who are not doing cloud native. Like, you exemplify some of them, like mobile development, or telecom, for example. It's not cloud native yet. So it would be pretty cool to look at those aspects of it. What to do if you are not in cloud native ecosystem, or you are not there yet.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. The stuff that we are talking about is not necessarily cloud native, right? You should have a secure supply chain whether or not you are producing Kubernetes deployments. You should also have a secure supply chain if you're making an iOS app or something. So yeah, I think we're in violent agreement, but I want to reiterate that I think this will be most successful if we are doing something unique from those other efforts, and I think we are.
Anyone else? Okay, and since this is the first time you are seeing this document, I don't expect you to read it in 2 minutes, but yeah, I put the link on Zoom chat, and I will share the link on Slack channel as well as mail list. So please go there and just add your thoughts directly at the document or comment on the document, so we can see like what kind of contributions we could make. Like we reuse what other communities are doing, but what we could introduce on top of that. For example, another idea we had was like OpenSSF or CNCF, Secure Software Factory, didn't talk much about production aspects. And one of the ideas we had was like, okay, development, everyone talks about, okay, what happens on the left-hand side of the software development lifecycle, if we put that way. But the focus on right-hand side, like what happens if a vulnerability is disclosed for an application or your product running in production already, how you can accommodate those things. Like you may do rolling upgrades, like bringing new version with vulnerabilities fixed, or in mobile case, you may push updates to your users. So looking at production side, most hand side would be something good, because in the end, we are talking about continuous delivery here, and one of the key benefits of continuous delivery, we all know what that is, like bringing things to production as fast and good as possible. So that is currently TBD here, because the idea to do with that part is to look actually this potato hat. That is again another initiative coming from CNCF. They are looking at different types of cloud native deployments. So this could perhaps cover cloud native production deployments, and then we can think about what about other type of deployments, non-cloud native deployments, extending the supply chain end to end. Maybe that could be the right way to put it. So that's all I want to talk about the proof of concept idea. And again, just to say this, Anne-Marie from Red Hat has been working on the stages and steps vocabulary or terminology document. That those two PRs, they are awesome. Like if you haven't seen them, just look at them. She put a lot of effort on those PRs, and there were a lot of conversations around what she contributed. They are still open, and we intend to get them merged so we can base our stages and steps we may come up with on top of that work, if the stages and steps we come up with are not there already. So that is how we converge these different efforts together within CDF, and then we can use that as a means to reach out to other communities, highlighting our thinking to them, and then see if they thought about those aspects. So Ankit, stage PR, this one, and step PR, and all the references are in the talk document at the end of the document, so you can see all those things I've been referring during past 15 minutes on the document as well. Okay, so one last time, anyone else, any other opinion, idea about the proof of concept? Okay, so I don't want to take any more of the meeting time because we have Priya with us. I will stop sharing, and Priya, you can take over and then start the presentation.
Oh, thank you. Let me share my screen. Okay, cool. Can everyone see that? Okay, great. Yeah, so I'm just going to do a quick intro to Tekton chains today, and then a demo so you can see how it works. There is kind of a bit of overlap probably with the Secure Software Factory demo you got last week, but hopefully this will go a little bit into depth and answer some of the more Tekton specific questions you might have had. Cool, quick agenda. I'm going to just quickly cover what Tekton is at a super basic level. just in case anybody hasn't used it before, talk about Tekton Chains, talk about SLSA, and do a quick demo. And I realize now that I actually moved these slides around this morning, so actually the demo will happen before I talk about SLSA. Okay, cool. What is Tekton? So Tekton is an open source Kubernetes native CI/CD platform, and it allows users to build, test, and deploy across cloud providers. I feel like probably people are pretty familiar at this point, so I'll just go through this quickly. So the basic unit of configuration in Tekton is the Tekton Task. You can deploy a task to your cluster where it can be used as a building block. It can either be run on its own or as part of a larger pipeline, or it can be referenced. You can kind of think of a task as completing like one step in like a larger pipeline that you might want to run. And then a Tekton task run is an instantiation of the Tekton task. So you can apply the task to your cluster, and then the task run basically actually kicks it off and runs it, turns it into pods, actually makes the thing happen. Yeah, so this is kind of where Tekton Chains comes in. So with Tekton, you can run your pipeline. You can kind of do what you would normally do with any CI/CD platform, whether that's building binaries, building images, and then storing them somewhere, maybe in an OCI registry or storing them in a bucket for your users to pull and then use. So the idea behind Tekton Chains, which I have spelled incorrectly, sorry. The idea behind Tekton Chains was to basically be the supply chain security manager for Tekton after this build is complete. So once your pipeline is completely finished running, your artifacts have been built and stored wherever they need to be stored, that's where Tekton Chains will come in and basically take care of anything related to supply chain security for you. So this could include things like signing artifacts that were generated by your Tekton pipeline. So this could be an OCI image or a file or a binary. Tekton Chains will also generate signed build provenance in the in-toto format for your task run, and then store those signatures somewhere in a configurable backend so that your end users can easily access your signatures and verify your artifact. So how does it do this? It leverages Sigstore under the hood and basically takes advantage of all the Sigstore tools and services to actually make this happen. So the key components of Sigstore. So what is Sigstore? Sigstore is an open source project which with the goal of making signing and verifying software easy and accessible. So it's free to use, and there are public instances of the two main Sigstore services, Fulcio and Recore, running just for open source use for anybody who wants to use them. So the two main services are Fulcio and Recore. So Fulcio is Sigstore's certificate authority, which issues short-lived code signing certificates. It ties those certificates to an identity via the OpenID Connect protocol. So if you've ever kind of seen like sign in with Google, sign in with GitHub, that's how Fulcio will establish identity. So you can request a short-lived code signing certificate for your artifact, and it'll be tied to your email address. Recore is Sigstore's transparency log. So it's an append-only log where you can store signatures. It's public for anyone to query. So the idea is that once you have signed your artifact, you can store the signature in Recore, and that makes it really easy for end users to find signatures, certificates, attestations kind of associated with your artifact. And then finally, Cosign is a CLI tool and library used for signing and verification. So under the hood, Tekton Chains uses the Cosign library for signing data, for signing images. It'll request certificates for that signature from Fulcio and then store everything in Recore so that end users can easily discover certificates associated with your artifact. So this is a badly drawn diagram by me trying to explain how this all works. So in your Kubernetes cluster, you'll have Tekton pipelines running. You can see it on the left side, and then Tekton Chains running in a separate namespace. When you start a task run, first Tekton pipelines is responsible for executing it. And once the task run is complete, Tekton Chains will constantly be observing all the task runs in the cluster. Once it notices that the task run is complete, it will attempt to sign any artifacts that may have been generated by that task run. So Tekton Chains will take in a signing key, which the user has configured themselves, generate signatures, generate attestations, and then mark the task run as signed. It'll also store provenance and the signature associated with that artifact in whatever storage backend you configured for Tekton chains. So right now we support storing things in OCI, in Google Cloud Storage, and in a variety of like DocDB backends. But OCI is probably the most popular one at the moment. So this is really cool, but what does this mean in the end? So as an end user, this means that when you download your artifact, either from OCI or GCS, you can actually just use the cosign tool provided by Sigstore to verify your artifact and verify build provenance. Basically, under the hood, cosign will take a look at your artifact, pull out the correct related entry from the record transparency log, use the signature or the certificate in that entry to verify against the signature and signed provenance that have been stored in whatever backend you configured. Okay, so that's a lot of information. Let's do a really quick demo. So I already created this cluster in Amazon EKS. And you can see that it was created with this flag with OIDC. So this is basically how the cluster itself will later authenticate to the full CO certificate authority service and prove identity. So that'll come up towards the end of the demo. I also already applied Tekton chains and Tekton pipelines with these two different kube control apply commands, just 2 files, nothing super unusual. And then before we actually get into the demo, we'll want to configure Tekton chains with some configuration that we need. So what these 4 commands are basically telling chains to do is telling it to store any provenance generated in the in toto format. It's telling it to store signatures in an OCI registry. It enables transparency logs, which basically means that the signatures and certificates will be stored in Recore, and it tells it to sign using full CO. So this basically means that instead of having to set up our own key pair or point chains to KMS, which it also supports, we'll take advantage of an ephemeral or a kind of keyless mode, which means that using cosign libraries under the hood, chains will generate an ephemeral key pair in memory, request a certificate from full CO using that key pair, and then actually only store the certificate with the public key embedded in it in Recore. So it's kind of nice because we don't need to manage keys, we don't need to keep track of a private key, and we also don't need to figure out how to distribute public keys to end users. We'll just store the certificate in the transparency log, and then end users can use cosign, which knows how to query the transparency log for the correct entry. So I've already run all of these as well, so I won't hit enter. A couple of things that I had to do to configure the cluster before we can get going. I created a service account which has permissions called ECR pusher, which has permission to push to my ECR container registry. We're going to use this to build an image and push it within Tekton. And then I also created another service account, the Tekton Chains controller service account, which also has permission to push to my ECR container registry. So Tekton Chains is going to use this to push the signature that it ultimately generates to my registry. And then my signature is going to live right next to the OCI image that will be created in my Tekton task run. Cool. So we can take a look at the task that we're actually going to apply. So I'm going to build an image with Canico, which is an open source tool for building images from Docker files in Kubernetes. So just taking a look at the task, we have a bunch of parameters that are passed in. The most important one is just image, which is the name of the image that we're going to want to push the final image to. And then there's a couple of workspaces here, including build context and the Docker file, Docker config, which will contain the authentication required for pushing to my registry. And then this is kind of the most important bit that we need to configure. So Tekton Chains basically observes Tekton pipelines and waits to see if it can identify an artifact that can be signed that was built from in the pipeline. So we kind of need to hint to Tekton Chains that an image was built, and we give chains that hint by storing the image digest and the image URL as results. So basically when Tekton Chains is observing this task run, once this task run is complete, it'll recognize, oh, an image was built because I know that I've like recognized these image URL and image digest results, and then it'll extract that image and attempt to sign it. So we have just a couple of steps here. The first one basically just adds a Docker file because it was easier for me to do that than mount one in. It's just a quick small hello world Docker file. This is the actual Canico step where we will build and push the image. And then the last step is kind of required just for that chains type hinting I mentioned earlier. We're going to take the name of the image and just store it in this image URL path. Also, feel free to jump in and ask any questions if anything doesn't make sense. But we can apply this task now. And I'm going to store, and we're going to push the final image to this ECR registry in my project. So I'm just going to store that as an environment variable and start the task with TKN. So we're going to start this Canico chains task using default, just whatever defaults were set in the parameters. We want it to push to this image. And then there's some config, and we're going to use that ECR pusher service account that I created earlier, which will give this task permission to push the image to my registry. So you can take a look. This might take a few seconds. Okay, cool. So we built the image, we pushed it to my registry. We can take a look now at this actual task run to see some more details. Oops, wrong order. Cool, so we can see that this image was built with this name and this digest. So if we now try to run this image, we should be able to pull it and run it and see our hello world. Cool. Okay, so the image was built and pushed successfully. But what happened once the task run actually completed? So this is where Tekton Chains is supposed to come in. And the nice thing is that once the task run is done, you can kind of just let Tekton Chains run in the background, and it should take care of signing and generating provenance for you completely. So, so if this worked properly, Tekton Chains should have generated provenance and stored it in OCI, generated signature and stored it in OCI, and also stored both of those in the transparency log as well. So we can actually just try and verify this image now. See if it works. What was let's do it this way. So hopefully we get great. Okay, so we actually find that we got a signature out of this, which means that Tekton Chains under the hood basically did everything we expected it to do. And we can see that the issuer of the signature was Amazon OIDC, and the subject was the service account that we ran, that we were running under. So basically the identity with the certificate associated with the signature is the service account that we were running under in the cluster. And this is really cool. It basically leverages that with OIDC feature that we used in Amazon EKS. So we can also take a look at the attestation that was generated by using cosign verify attestation. This should give us some more details into how the image was actually built. So we can take a look at the payload, code it to JQ. And we can actually see all the details of the task run that we just ran now, which are stored in the log for any end user who wants to run this image. So the provenance contains the name of the image, the digest, all of the parameters that we set, and every single step that was run in the cluster, along with some times about when the build started and when the build finished. So it's kind of cool. Basically, all you have to do is install Tekton Chains once in your cluster, and it'll kind of handle signing and generating provenance for all your task runs from there.
I have a question. Thank you for the demo. I tried it a couple of weeks ago and I was not able to make it work. I didn't spend too much time, but one thing was difficult for me was to find out where I was doing something wrong. Could you try if, for example, you're in your task run, you are not specifying image digest, and if there is a mistake here, how can we debug, and how can we see that what is missing? If we are looking at the Tekton chains logs, I don't think we will see what is missing.
Yeah, I would
How can we
agree that
debug
the logs could use some work. So the way I usually debug is by looking at the logs for the Tekton Chains controller. The main issue with that is that there's a lot of logs, as you can see.
Okay.
It will kind of generate the logs for each task run. So you'll usually search through the logs by the task run ID, and then kind of see what happens after. It will print out all errors. It can just be that the errors can be hard to find sometimes. So like for the one that we just did, you can see like it found the task run, it created the payload, is using this type of envelope signer, signing, storing the payload, starting to upload attestations. Often this is where it kind of fails when it tries to upload due to authentication errors. So you'll usually see like some sort of error printed out here. But I can definitely debug with you on the side, because it's true, it's not an easy thing to debug, and we could definitely work on our documentation around it as well.
Thanks.
I think I might have had one more slide unless people have more questions about the demo. Okay, we can just wait till the end. Yeah, so the last thing I wanted to mention is the SLSA framework. So the SLSA security framework checklist for software integrity. So right now, Tekton Chains achieve SLSA level 2. And as you could have seen in the demo, this basically just means that the builds run in a build service, in this case Tekton. Provenance is authenticated, so the provenance was signed by a full CO, and we were able to verify it with cosign. And the provenance is also service generated, so the service in this case is Tekton Chains. And that's it.
Thanks, Priya. I see a question from Ankit. Ankit, did you get answer to your question, or?
Yeah, so I had a question. So say, like someone has a vault, like CA, can they use that for the cert thing instead of using full seal?
So I think right now, Chains only supports instances of full CO. So if you have your own instance of full CO running, you can point to that. But generic CAs, I don't think it works with at the moment. But if it's an open source thing, I feel like we'd be open to adding other options as well if they work. If they're also code signing certificate authorities.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions to Priya?
Not a question, just want to say thanks. That was an excellent demo.
Thank you.
Just maybe another question for me. Is there a plan to add something in Tekton dashboard to be able to see what has been signed on it, to plug this with the UI?
I think I don't actually know if there are any plans, but that would be cool if you could take a look at a task run and it could point you to like the signatures and attestations that were created.
Okay, thanks.
No, is basically the short answer.
So I don't know if this is not exactly a question for Priya, unless you know the answer. So this is really cool for Tekton, and things like Jenkins X and Shipwright that are built on Tekton can take advantage of it relatively easily just by virtue of being on Tekton. But does anybody know of any effort to emulate this in Jenkins or any other thing, not even CDF projects, but other projects in the area? Like observing a Jenkins X run and,
So we actually have like a project that will start from this month or maybe like next month, where we want to integrate with like Tekton chains and also build something which is like native for say, Jenkins X. Because we have like pipeline, I mean we have like Lighthouse jobs and pipeline things that are built on top of like Tekton. So we would probably want to like cryptographically like sign them and do all of that. It's actually like a summer of code
cool.
project. So we will see how that goes, and we will try to add it to the UI as well. If you can click on a Jenkins X pipeline and see if like that thing has been signed. So yeah.
Cool, very cool. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks a lot again, Priya, for presentation and demo. It was great, and thanks for taking time to join our meeting. We will probably, come back to you when we start, going into details, Secure Software Factory and Tekton CD chains. And for example, when we start looking at Jenkins X as part of our POC, we will ask help from you. And I invited you to our Slack channel, so you are there, so we can ping you for these things. Okay, so I think that was the last topic on the agenda. Just want to remind you our next meeting. So the file or document I am showing right now is the document we keep track of past and upcoming presentations. As I noted during the proof of concept topic, we could perhaps look at production deployment aspects of software supply chain as well, and perhaps look for possibility of reusing and potato head and collaborating with CNCF tag app delivery. So we invited Thomas Schwetz from Dynatrace to come and talk about what they are doing in their tag app delivery group, and perhaps do a demo on Potato Head. And that will happen on 28th of April, in 2 weeks, same time. And then we can perhaps talk about, our approach in the POC and how we can use this effort there. So if you are interested to hear what they've been doing and ask questions and take part in conversations, please join on 28th. And our meeting on May 12th will have James Rawlings with us talking about Cartographer, which is a kind of relatively new project, taking a choreography approach to CI/CD pipelines to orchestrate things, and that presentation demo will take place on May 12th. So that was the only thing I want to highlight. So before we close the meeting, anyone wants to bring up an additional topic or share an idea, thought, you can do that. Okay, then everyone gets 16 minutes back for their day. And as we discussed at the beginning, if you are having a vacation or observing Easter, have a happy Easter and have a nice long holiday, and talk to you in 2 weeks. Thank you very much for joining.
Thanks. See you, everyone. Thank you, Priya.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.